All right, everyone, we are warming up the latest RCFB Talk here on Twitter Spaces. Let's see here. We are loading everything up. I can see one of my co-hosts has arrived as we put this all together. There we go. It's always sort of funny. I've complained about this every time we've done it, but the way Twitter has set this up is we basically have to kind of go live and immediately start putting everybody on. And there is no green room, so we just basically start immediately. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for joining us, and I see our guest is now with us as well, so I have sent him a speaker invite, and it looks like he is accepted as well. So great. So my name is Bob Akhieri. I am one of the team that runs RCFB on Reddit, and I am joined, as always, by JD and Sirius. Hey, guys.
Hello, hello. It is a wonderful Tuesday evening, and I am so excited for the talk that we're going to have tonight. We are going to be going back to one of my early roots in media, and I'm so excited to talk about Timmy Chang, Hawaii football, and everything to do with it with one of my long time friends. It's Mr. John Veneri. He is a former slotback here at the University of Hawaii. He is a color analyst for ESPN Honolulu, and one of the most definitive experts on Hawaii football that we could possibly have. And SRS, I know that you're excited to have him as well here today.
I sure am, JD. And, it's always great when we can get someone in to talk about these programs from, every facet of experience you could think of, from covering it to being a player. And I'm really excited to see what his insight's going to be until Twitter kicks me off of the app again for some reason.
But John, welcome to RCFB Talk. We are so happy to have you here today. How is everything going in the 50th state today?
Thanks, guys, for having me. And as you might imagine, if you've been following the news or if you've been living under a rock, it's pretty crazy here. It's pretty. The last 4 days have been nuts. Absolutely crazy.
It has been just an insane 3 weeks. I mean, we are not even a month removed from Todd Graham getting called before the state legislature to testify about the culture of the football team. And then we had a wild offer that was declined by a legacy coach. And now the prodigal son, Timmy Chang, is finally coming home to Hawaii. Johnny, can you summarize kind of what we've seen over these last couple of weeks and especially these last 4 days with the actual offer that came to be for Timmy Chang?
Well, let me just start by saying, no matter who the coach is, I have always given my 100% support. As a former player and as a broadcaster for 25 years covering Hawaii football, I've been in and around the program for the last 30. It's a tough time. I think that what started the weekend was a crazy fiasco. I think there was a lot of excitement. And the moment, and it's been happening a lot, even before Todd Graham got hired, the name June Jones makes everybody go absolutely berserk.
Absolutely.
They get excited. They get driven. They have opinions. They have, wild notions that this is the guy that's going to bring us back. And while that could have been the case, that's not the route that the university went. A lot of people are saying what was offered to June Jones was bull, and I think most college coaches would say that was just ridiculous. I think a lot of people thought that maybe this university was just laying it out there. It was a backhanded offer, and of course June Jones isn't going to take an offer like that. I think what started it off at is the university wanted to bring, if it was an older coach, they wanted to bring an older coach on to possibly pass the torch to one of his younger assistant coaches.
Mm-hmm.
That's the rumblings. June doesn't want that. June wanted a 5-year contract. He didn't care about the money. He said this publicly, that he wanted to be able to turn this program around. After that, it was up to the university. He just wanted to be able to have the opportunity to hire who he wanted to hire and come in and make some changes.
Mm-hmm.
The news that he declined the offer first had everybody thinking, oh my gosh, the money isn't good enough. Now he wants more money. But that wasn't the case. And then when it publicly came out on his own Twitter page, the facts actually did come out. Now, I didn't get a chance to watch the press conference today from Dave Matlin. He finally spoke to the media. I didn't get a chance to see his comments, but I'll be anxiously waiting for the news to come on tonight. And just to talk about, the fiasco that was the June Jones possibility.
Mm-hmm.
The naming of Timmy Chang made things a little bit better for folks to swallow, I think. Now, Timmy Chang he's not really proven. He's been a coach for a decade. He has been a coordinator, but at smaller schools like Emory. And so he's a local boy. Mm-hmm. He's a quarterback. He is as close to possibly getting to June Jones as you could possibly get. He's a disciple of June Jones. He has used June Jones as references and as a sounding board over his last decade of coaching. For him to come back, there is a lot of excitement. It's probably the next best thing. But a lot of people are still mad that June Jones isn't the guy. Mm-hmm. And that maybe Timmy could have possibly learned a little bit more from June directly if they were coaching together. That's not the case. I think there is still excitement. Timmy's a good guy. He was a good player. He has coached at Colorado State, at Nevada, and a couple other smaller schools. And he does have some experience. I have told him, in fact, I told him this morning, you're only as good as your assistant coaches, and I can't wait to see who's on his staff. And that's where I left it. That's kind of where I'm leaving it.
Mm-hmm.
I told him, I said, if he ever needs anything from me, I'm here to help. If he wants to talk to me, I'm here. But I'm 100% behind him, and I'm behind the program, and we'll see how it runs.
Now, you also have this unique position of you are a former player with the University of Hawaii. You've been around the program for many, many years. And on top of that, we're starting to see this coalescing of endorsements coming in. We saw the endorsements not come in just from June Jones, but from Rich Miano, from Cal Lee, from Marcus Mariota, from all these big players in Hawaii football. What kind of power does that endorsement have in terms of getting the Hawaii fan base on board with this hire?
Well, I mean, I think the Hawaii fan base, once they knew it was Timmy, I think there is ample amount of support. I think there's going to be a good handful, maybe a bunch of people that are upset, like I said, that June Jones didn't get hired. But he is not a magic maker. I think he has the tools to be able to turn it around again like he did in '99. But I just don't, with the transfer portal that has made it difficult for teams across the country, with losing some of your top players, defense and offense, it would have been a rebuilding year. He didn't come in with an ample amount of. He wouldn't have been coming in with an ample amount of starting talent. He would have had to build some players up. I think there is an ample supply of top-rated talent on this team that could probably run the run and shoot. Mm-hmm. But let's face it, what happened in 1999, the biggest turnaround in college football history, that doesn't come along it hasn't been since '99. So, I mean, you're talking 22 years, 23 years. Could he have done it? Possibly. I think a lot of people were hoping that was the case again. But that's not really how the book is written, right? I mean, You're hoping that's the way the pages turn, but you're not sure. You're really not sure of how it would go.
Now, when he comes into this, it's not going to be the exact situation that we saw June Jones when he first walked in. It was a team that had not won any games at all. You're coming off a team that has qualified for a bowl game in the last 2 years. Now, you have some big issues with you've got a bunch of transfers going out. You got your starting quarterback, your leading rusher, and all those other huge starters choosing to go back to the mainland for football. But what kind of culture is Timmy Chang walking into when he gets to see this team, these players, the coaching staff? Because I know he's got Abel Limmerman coming back in as an assistant coach. Yogo's back in. What's the kind of culture that Timmy Chang is going to have to be working with?
Okay, so Jacob Euro is also a St. Louis player, and he's a defensive coach. Abraham Elimimian played here at Hawaii, was a good defensive back, and I think a lot of people think that's a good keep. And Abe Elimimian has actually survived a couple of coaching changes now, and so has Yoro. So to keep a couple of guys that are good recruits that are that are behind this program, that don't want to leave, that want to be here, those are good guys to have. I think Victor Santa Cruz is another guy that wants to stay. And in all honesty, all of the coaches remain until they're let go, right? So they're off recruiting as we speak. They're off recruiting the new talent. I think that, again, I'll say this again. I think you're only as good as your assistants, right? The leader has to pick the guys around him. He's got to pick guys that he trusts. There's a lot of facets to that. There's recruiting, there's coaching, there's community talkings. You need the community backing, you need the financial support. And then there's a group that has literally complained about a coaching staff and the way they've been talked to, the way they've been coached, and the culture that is around these players. With Timmy coming in, he is Hawaii. He exudes aloha and Hawaii, and he knows what it's like. And yes, he's been gone for a while, but he's a local boy. He knows exactly how to talk to these players. He's coached on the mainland, so he knows how to talk to those guys too. He knows how to talk to the mainland recruits and the mainland players. And so does the guys on staff. I mean, Abraham Elimimian played in Hawaii, but he's from the mainland. Jacob Yoro is from Hawaii, so he knows they can establish a culture. But again, it all depends on who he keeps, who he brings in, how those guys coach, and really the culture is going to be set on, in that first staff meeting. Because let me tell you this, Dave Aranda is an amazing football coach. I got a chance to speak with him many times. I even helped him a few times with some schemes. And that is a guy who is super smart, and we know where he's gone. He went to LSU. He's now at Baylor. That is he's an amazing coach. He wants everybody to be talked to the way they would want to be talked to. He coaches, and he's a good coach, and he uses a certain technique to get his point across. Doesn't always have to be yelling. It doesn't have to be obscenities. And he's one of those guys that doesn't really yell obscenities.
No, he does not.
But Dave Aranda is a high benchmark. If you can get somewhere in there, the way you coach, the way you talk to players, as long as they're understanding what needs to get done, they're going to hear you. They're going to enjoy it. And then the next part of that is winning games. Winning makes things so much better.
Absolutely.
I have a question for you as well, John.
Okay.
Obviously, Hawaii has had sort of a transition in facilities with the problems of the Aloha Stadium and needing to move on campus with the repurposed TC Ching complex. How do you see the coach Timmy Chang navigating that? Because obviously it's different than when he was there. And how do you see that?
Well, I see it as a former player. I see it as a problem with recruiting right off the bat. I will say this as a broadcaster, though. I went through games this year with no fans in the stands, with some fans in the stands, and then with 5,000 fans in a 9,000 seat stadium. I actually really, really like the facility. I think it's very intimate. It can be really loud, even with 5,000, with 5,000 fans in the stadium. I do think, though, that it's a problem. I think you need to at least double it. And I know that at the beginning of this past season, there was talks of at least getting it to 15,000 for this year. I think that's possible. I think they need to do that. Beyond that, there is a major, major problem. Hawaii's facilities, and I'm going to probably get in trouble for some of the things I say, but I'm saying it as a former player because as a broadcaster, my facilities are all I need is a headset and a microphone, and I can talk sports until I'm blue in the face. But I'll say this as in two parts. As a former player, we had nowhere near what they have now, and we got the job done. What they have now is nowhere near what it's like around our own conference at that. So when you go to a Colorado State stadium that has a beautiful facility that's practically brand new, that seats 35,000 and can expand to 40 with luxury seating and suites and Hall of Fame halls and practice rooms for each individual position, and a weight room and a snack bar. You are seriously behind the curve when it comes to being able to keep up with a team that's in Colorado. Fort Collins is not Hawaii. You can, but then, and here's the catch. You can sell the beaches all you want, but when it comes down to it, the players during the season are going from their room to school, from school to the locker room, from the locker room back to their room. There's not a whole lot of beach time in there. You've got to be able to up your facilities. Hawaii's facilities are not near where it needs to be. And I'll just say that as a former player. It needs to be bumped up, and it needs a complete redo. It needs an overhaul. But going back to the stadium, when you look at the field looks great. 5,000 people can be very loud. And we know that if you selectively put a camera in a position that gets a clump of people, it's going to look crowded regardless. And so if you're making it look good, you can make it look good. I think it's a great facility, but it needs to be bumped up. I have my own thoughts on what should happen, but you never know. You never know.
Mm-hmm. Now, as they've got these facilities, though, you're still going to have a coach that is coming in with the situation that he's got, and he's got to find a way to get success on that. If you are Timmy Chang coming into this program, what is the recruiting pitch that you are pitching? And not just to the boys on the mainland, where California is always going to be a big pull, but you're also when you're going in and you're talking to the boys out in Kahuku and Mililani and Punahou and telling them over at St. Louis, hey, there is a reason you want to stay on Oahu. What is that pitch that you sell Hawaii on in the modern day?
Well, this is a coach that's been in Nevada where you play in 20-degree weather and sometimes even lower than that. Your first pitch is, hey, you're going to be playing at home in 80-degree weather from August till December. That's one. Because I've played in 36 degrees and raining in Utah, and that's not fun. And Wyoming at -7 really sucks. So yeah, you can sell the beach, but you can sell the weather too. But really, when it comes down to it, Timmy knows what it's like to be a local boy and play at home. His dad was the red cap for home games. He knows exactly what it's like to play in front of his family, and we're talking in an intimate way. His dad was on the field for each and every one of his home games. There's something to be said about a local boy staying home and playing in front of his family. I did it myself. It's an amazing feeling. It really is. It's difficult, though, to be able to recruit a player, say, from Texas or from Georgia, and have them fly all the way across the country and say, look, we know it's a far way. Your parents to watch a home game, that's a lot of money to bring a family all the way from Georgia or Dallas or whatever it is, all the way to Hawaii to watch a game. And that's a harder sell. As a local boy who stayed home, there's just no question that this is a place that you would want to play. But when you're offered, 3 different uniforms, Nike gear up the yin yang, possible money making contracts, it's hard. It's hard to compete with those teams. It's hard to compete with some of the teams that are even on around the Mountain West. It's a difficult position. It's why I don't coach. I wouldn't want to be a coach. Now you add the transfer portal. Oh my goodness. How difficult is that? Players left Hawaii, yes, but players left teams like Alabama and Oklahoma. You're losing players from teams that are good football teams that have great facilities. So it's something that's happening all around the country. You have to be able to sell a fun atmosphere, a really good home game experience. You have to sell what they're calling brotherhood. For those of you guys that don't understand pidgin English,
brotherhood for all you Howleys out there.
Exactly. There's a lot to be said about playing for the University of Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. It's not for everyone. But what you're going to have to do, and I've been a firm believer. I played under Paul Johnson, Bob Wagner, and Paul Johnson. Paul Johnson's spread off option. I've firmly believed that in a place like Hawaii, where you can't really get the 5 stars, all the top athletes, you have to have some type of gimmick offense. You have to be able to run something that not everybody runs. Just ask the academies. They've been doing that forever since Paul Johnson was there. Kenny Niumatalolo was one of my coaches. Jeff Munkin at the Army was one of my coaches. Those guys know what it takes to win when you don't have the 5 stars, when you have a smaller offensive lineman, when you've got, guys that aren't as big as the 6'3" and safeties that you're going to go against. You bring in speed and you bring in a scheme that works for that type. And they've proven it. Hawaii has proven it. We've proven it over the years that you can play occasionally against big teams, especially at home. There's a bunch of things that can be sold there. I think Timmy Chang might have a little bit of trouble again, but you've got to have good recruiters. You've got to have people that can sell the culture, the place, the food, the beaches, the weather, those types of things, because you can't sell them on a brand new weight room. You can't sell them on a 50,000 seat stadium. There's a bunch of things that hamstring them, but I think it still can be done.
John, speaking of staff and scheme, Timmy Chang's coming into this at the FBS level. He's been a positional coach, not the normal transition we typically see. I guess probably Dabo is one of the few examples of a guy who quickly jumped from position coach to head coach and had a lot of success. Obviously, Timmy Chang's going to be in a unique position. He's going to face some difficulties as both a relatively young coach, but also one who hasn't put in a lot of years as a coordinator. Do you have any ideas on what he might be looking for in terms of the coordinators that he brings in, both the schemes, the gimmicky kind of styles, and recruiting needs that he'll have? And also, is he going to be looking for, do you think, younger coaches or older coaches to try to fill those spots to add in some depth or look for new ideas?
He did say in his press conference that he was going to keep the run and shoot as a base package. He's been at Nevada. They run the pistol occasionally, which in some formations look like the run and shoot. They also run some option off of that. I believe he'll hold true to what he's the disciple of, and that's the run and shoot. That is an offense that we know works here because June Jones ran it, and Mouse Davis kindly helped when that was running for 10 years. Timmy Chang knows the run and shoot, but he's also gotten some experience running some other offenses, and so, or at least been in some other schemes coaching. And so I think if you can take the best of some of the things that you aren't familiar with and you add it to the run and shoot, you've got yourself a pretty decent offense. And you've got guys already here that can help run it. As far as his coaching staff, it would be, again, I said this, you're only as good as your assistant coaches. If you can bring in some guys, not necessarily his buddies, you don't want to. I'm sure his phone has been off the hook since Friday, of guys that say, hey, I want to help. I want to work for you. He really has to sort through all of that and be like, hey, we've known each other for 20 years. I'm sorry. I got to go with another guy. I think he knows very well that this position is going to require a mix of both young and seasoned coaches. And that doesn't mean that the young guys aren't seasoned. I'm just saying that he's going to have a good mix. He's going to have guys that he can trust, and guys that have the mixture of being a good coach, a good leader, a good communicator, and a good recruiter. I think I might have said that already, but that's so important. I'll say it twice. You've got to have guys like that around you. And if that's a mix of, veteran seasoned coaches and some young guys, then so be it.
John, I want to, obviously we're respecting your time. We have a couple of reader questions that were dropped in the announcement that we were having.
Well, I hope I can answer it.
Question. So one question, and Ja Easy, who's probably one of our most frequent Hawaii fans, who's always commented for years in every late night Hawaii game thread that we have, because I mean, I live in Central Time Zone. Most of us do. Seems like, so we know what the Hawaii test really truly is. But his questions actually is good. It's he wanted to ask about replacing the legend, Robert Kekaula.
Robert Kekaula, yeah.
Yeah, and as a color commentator, and just any funny stories or things you want to say about what he was like, and whether you're aware of that late night fame, and if he was aware of it, because so many of us who stay up late. I remember the first game that got me hooked on watching late night Hawaii football. It wasn't even when I lived in the Central Time Zone. I went to USC back in the day. So that 1999 season, I was thrilled to watch that opening game late night, even in Los Angeles. And I then started watching every game afterwards because it became perfect. It was always fitting right into the college football schedule. And I think most people, when they realize they're becoming a hardcore college football fan, realize they're staying up late, but this game is past all the others. And I remember when they finally got that win, and I forgot who the announcer was, but he was so thrilled at the end of the game the following week. He's like, I got to go home and tell my wife we won, a game. I just remember I'd never heard two more earnest announcers in my entire life. But tell me about that. What's it like to follow in those footsteps and give us some stories about that?
Well, thankfully, I've known Robert since I was a player. Since I was in high school, I knew Robert. The two of us went to the same high school. He's a bit older than I am. And so during college, I was one of those class clowns. I'd imitate coaches. He'd make me do it, and I did it. Despite having to do bear crawls for a little while after that, I would still do it. Robert was my friend. Robert interviewed me a lot. I interned with Robert when I decided that I would follow in his footsteps. I interned with him to start my career, and then I worked with him at ESPN Honolulu. He was the color analyst with Bobby Kern. I was the sideline reporter, and so I worked with him for 12 years. Doing the football games. Robert was a colorful guy, and to be able to take, well, let me preface that by saying he decided to move over to TV to do play-by-play, and then it was the natural progression was for me to go from the sideline into the color commentary spot. He still helped me a lot. We still talked about football before the broadcast. We did a lot of that so that we were both knowledgeable about the game. He was larger than life in many ways. And he had some quick comments about games that only local people would know. For instance, he would say something like, "I got a 3-letter word for you. Oh, wow." and that's the kind of stuff, that's the kind of stuff he would do. That's how he would describe a play, and at times, and people found that both comical and even interesting at times. He certainly had a different way of delivering a game, and I will forever remember him both as a friend and as a brother, really.
He certainly is one of those guys where he's always been absolutely intertwined when it comes into Hawaii football. And we've seen a lot of similar comparisons, when we saw the passing of Colt Brennan earlier this year. How much of that impact of that loss has been seen with the culture of Hawaii football over this last couple of years or so?
Losing Colt Brennan was obviously a tragedy. Losing Robert so suddenly was another tragedy. I think a lot of people realize, that Robert had health issues, and that he was really trying hard to right some of the wrongs. He had lost a lot of weight, but it all caught up with him. As far as losing Colt Brennan, it's another case. A lot of people saw the sadness and the hurt in Colt after not being able to continue playing football, and football was his life. His injuries took a toll on him, both in the pain category and in the mental category, and that was a tragedy. I think Hawaii did a fabulous job this last year of celebrating both the football player and the broadcaster. I thought they did an amazing job. Even in Vegas during the UNLV game, they had a nice picture of him and a lei, and they celebrated it in Vegas. It's hard to lose guys like that. I've lost some teammates over the years. I've lost some friends over the years. It's never easy, but people that are so public like that makes it that much more difficult. You feel like you've lost a family member, and I was very close with Colt as well. I mean, he'd been over to my house for dinner a couple times, especially. He enjoyed my father and the conversations that he had with my dad. So Colt, I think a lot of us could call Colt a very close friend. That was the case for me as well. And so losing those two guys really did hurt. They were synonymous with UH football, no doubt about it.
And now with the hiring of Timmy Chang, it almost feels, I don't necessarily want to use the word healing, but I feel like it's more circle gathering of you're bringing back in the guys that you know who are also intertwined with Hawaii football, that are synonymous with Warriors football. And with Timmy Chang, I feel like there's a great opportunity there to kind of build up that culture. I know that they've been going off of the brotherhood on the social media hashtags here for a little bit, but I feel like this is an excellent opportunity to kind of bridge that gap, to kind of bring back the original culture, the original roots of Hawaii football. As a former player where, you used to play in the original rainbow uniforms, I mean, how do you feel about that with coming back and bridging back what Hawaii football used to be as it goes forward into what it can be?
Well, there was a time, I'll take it back a little farther, during Fred Von Oppen years, and a lot of people will say those are the worst 3 years in Hawaii football history. And then along comes June Jones and turns it around. There was disconnect during the Fred Von Oppen years. I believe that there was also major disconnect in the Todd Graham years. To have a guy like Timmy Chang, a local boy who played in Hawaii. I mean, I was super excited about Nick Rolovich coming back because he loved Hawaii. He did exude the Aloha spirit. He was a former UH player that went on and did well. And so I was extremely excited when Nick Rolovich was hired. That didn't play out the way everybody was hoping, but it was what he thought was best for him. Mm-hmm. Then Todd Graham comes and more disconnect. I think what started this past weekend off with the disappointment of not being able to pull June Jones back as a head coach, it lessened the excitement of Timmy Chang being hired. Had June Jones not been involved in that whole thing, I think the Timmy Chang hire would have excited even more people. I think the loss of June Jones not coaching has somewhat subsided for most, and the excitement is building now that Timmy Chang is on the staff. It'll only get bigger once we learn who his supporting staff is. I believe that fully. But I also believe that the connection is made again. The disconnect with the Graham era is over. Timmy Chang is now the head coach, and a lot of people will get behind that. A St. Louis boy, a former Hawaii quarterback. It really doesn't get much better than that.
Absolutely.
And now all he has to do is win a bunch of games. Because Paul Johnson, he was asked once by my broadcast partner Bobby Kern. He said, what's it like coaching at Georgia Tech? And he said, well, in his best Southern accent, he said, well, they don't expect you to win but once a week. And so I think when you win games, everything is better, and Timmy will have that. He might get a little bit of a pass early on, but when it comes down to it, this fan base wants wins. They want a football team that they can get behind, and that'll hold true when he takes over and when he starts playing games.
Yes, and presumably he's going to be doing it in winning in a way. I imagine he'll probably go back to the roots of the air raid, or not the air raid, excuse me, the run and shoot.
Yeah.
Because that was always something that was always defined as a winning program. That's what June Jones ran when Nick Rolovich turned the corner by going into the run and shoot. He started to see success, and I'm sure Timmy Chang will do some variation of that, whether he merges it a little bit with West Coast offense or air raid concepts or something similar like that. But when it comes down to Hawaii's identity, do you feel like it's a better identity to go back to that run and shoot, or something more along the lines of like a run option offense that you used to run? Or does it not necessarily matter on what kind of identity they choose as long as there is one offense identity that they choose? And again, I want to double check. Know that we've got you for a limited amount of time. Want to make sure we're still good on your time as well.
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's not dinner time here yet. Yes, I agree. I think, and I think I might have mentioned this earlier, that he did say that he's going to use the run and shoot as a base, and that I believe that he'll add some of the best things that he learned from the other coaches that he coached with into it. I mean, who wouldn't, right? You use what worked. Clearly, you're not going to use what didn't work. You're going to use what worked at those different places and against different teams. And I'm sure if Timmy Chang is smart, he'll adjust. He said that the run and shoot will be his base. I believe that it's an offense like that Hawaii fans want to see more than the offense that I was a part of. I think the option at times is way more boring than an air attack of the run and shoot. I think depending on who he brings on staff offensively, I mean, he said himself he doesn't know if he'll be calling plays. It depends on who he brings on board. And so with that in mind, I think that the run and shoot will allow, especially in his first year taking over, it'll allow you the best chance to succeed. You'll have things that people have seen, but you'll be able to do things that are hard to cover, especially if you have the right personnel. It goes back to what I said a little bit earlier. I believe that I say gimmicky. I don't have a better word for it. If anybody has a better word for it, tell me.
Sure.
But it's those types of offenses that allow you here in Hawaii to have the best chance of succeeding. That's what I firmly believe, and I know that a lot of people are behind that notion.
Absolutely. So I am a little bit curious. So you say that there's a lot of that anticipation from the fans of that's their expectation. When it comes to fan opinion, where do you traditionally look to in order to get that? Is that what you see on message boards or talking in person, talking to former players, on any kind of social media, callers on air? What's the general way that you get the sentiment of the Hawaii fan base?
Well, again, I think the subsiding of the loss of June Jones is still there. I think it's going to take a little while to get over it. And once Timmy Chang starts naming some of his coaches, I think the full excitement will be there. From the people that have messaged me as a friend and a broadcaster, and people that have been around the last 30 years that I know, and former teammates, I think this is something that everybody wants to get behind and is excited about. Any more than that, I don't really care to have an opinion on. I'm fully in support of this coaching staff, whoever comes in, but I am in full support of Timmy Chang. And while I know that there's not much that I can do to help, and I leave my opinions to when I call games, I'm in full support of it. I hope that he succeeds. This is the only team that I cheer for. I do not have an NFL team. The University of Hawaii, I don't care what people say. I am biased up the yin yang. I cheer for this team. I support this team. It is one of the teams that I was on that is in the Hall of Honor. It runs through my blood. I thought we were going to be doing a video conference here. I'm wearing a UH shirt right now. It's one of those things where I will support the staff. I will support the team, win or lose. I want to see them succeed just as much as the person in the front row that buys season tickets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned those season tickets, and I am curious, again, with the new stadium, it's a different capacity than they had at Aloha Stadium.
Yep.
And we saw over the last 2 years, they've really limited the amount of fans that have been able to come into the stadium even to begin with. When it comes to that buy-in from season ticket holders and longtime fans of the program, what is that buy-in currently like? And what does Hawaii's program need to do to make sure that if either they are engaged, they stay engaged, or if they've dropped off a little bit, how to bring them back and get engaged?
Well, I think we saw that teams across the country had stands that were full, that didn't have regulations. Hawaii was one of the most strict states when it came to gathering even outdoors at that time, and not allowing fans in a stadium. And then to take that a step farther, not only were they not at capacity, but they weren't even serving food. They weren't serving drinks. You had to buy a bottle of water for $4. I mean, there were a ton of negatives. And I think part of it, why you didn't get the 9,000 and only 5,000 the last few couple of weeks, were because people just didn't want to sit there and they want to be able to tailgate. They want to be able to eat. They want to be able to drink what they want to drink. And with the scare of the pandemic, a lot of people didn't want to have to sit through that. They would have rather spent $70 and buy the pay-per-view package, or pay-per-view game, because that's what it was per game. What I think will happen this year, depending on restrictions, I think you will see more people come back. I think the mask wearing is going to be a thing, I think, for everybody for a while. But I think people are a little less afraid and will be more apt to going to the games. I'm hoping that's the case. Will 9,000 be filled? I'm hoping. Will they? I think it also depends on whether or not they're going to double the capacity to 15,000. I think that's going to be a lot of work that needs to already have started, but I haven't seen that. I think a lot of people, there's just so many variables. There's so many unknowns for a season ticket holder, that there was a lot of season ticket holders that I spoke to that didn't want to renew because they didn't like the coaching staff and they didn't like what they were hearing from the players, especially the last couple of months. It's just been an ugly situation to be around. I think now that Timmy's in, I say Timmy, like, a lot of people are going to have a hard time getting away from calling him Timmy. It's got to be Coach Tim or Coach Timmy or Coach Chang at this point. But I think now that Coach Timmy has come in, there's going to be a revitalization, I'm hoping, a resurgence, a renewal. I believe that will happen over the course of the next couple of weeks, maybe even the next couple of months. I'm not sure exactly when season tickets go on sale, but as soon as the schedule is announced, what the home games look like, I think you'll get even more of a resurgence and a renewal from the diehard fans. I think the true diehard fans were the 5,000 that were there. The people that surround that will be the people that aren't afraid anymore, that don't mind going and aren't afraid of the restrictions and don't care to drink a beer or two, and are all right with a bottle of water that costs $4.
You mentioned kind of, the issues that had surrounded the program towards the end of the season. And from the mainland, a lot of us were watching this, developing saga with Hawaii football. And I remember JD multiple times would just, he'd look at Todd Graham at a game or in a press conference, and he just never looked the part of a Hawaii coach. Definitely not with what we've seen in the past with June Jones or other coaches since then. He just never really seemed to fit in. He looked way too stuffy and, I don't want to say professional, but he didn't have kind of like the laid back look that we've gotten used to with Hawaii coaches. And then, of course, once the season's over, we start hearing more players entering the transfer portal. His son enters the transfer portal. We're having government hearings about the program. Was there a specific moment that you felt was like a tipping point that it became, we have some culture issues at Hawaii to Todd Graham is running out of time here, and he is eventually going to be either removed or he's going to resign from this position, that essentially he's not going to get another chance at this?
Well, regardless of who entered the transfer portal after a particular player, I don't want to bash Todd Graham. I had many conversations with him on the road, sat down with him to talk football a bunch. I think during COVID, it was a difficult time to come into a place such as Hawaii if you're not from Hawaii. I think the culture here is so different, drastically different than a place like Dallas. I believe that's where he was from, Dallas. But he had been at other places, around the country and coached there. So I don't want to bash Todd Graham. I think he was a little behind the 8 ball already, having to come to a place across the pond, across the Pacific Ocean, 2,300 miles away from your nearest landmass on the continent, and have to learn a culture and coach a football team. So let me just say that before I go on. I believe that the beginning of the end was the moment that your starting quarterback, a St. Louis graduate who committed himself to playing in front of his family at home, at a team that he loved and cared about and dreamed about playing for his entire life, the moment he entered the transfer portal, I believe that was the beginning of the end, regardless of the players after that.
Yeah, the second you lose a guy like Shavon Cordero, who had been a part of the program for so long, and again, you mentioned that St. Louis pipeline when it comes from guys like a Timmy Chang, build quarterbacks like Marcus Mariota to build that kind of emphasis on what kind of quarterback can come from there. And then he chooses to come to Hawaii to defend Pride Rock, and then he ultimately chooses to go to San Jose State at the end of a season.
Because I think he's better than San Jose State. I think he,
Absolutely.
and so that
Absolutely.
made it even worse. But let me go ahead and say this too, because I think it's important to note that St. Louis, the top of the line local boys, used to go away. You know, I can pinpoint a couple of St. Louis players. You look at Marcus Mariota. Obviously, he wasn't even recruited by Hawaii. He went to Oregon. And then you go back a little bit farther. I can name guys like Chris Fuamatu-Ma'afala, who went on to Utah and then played for the Steelers, and and guys like that. You didn't see the top-notch players, or at least the majority of them went away. You didn't see them come and stay. And Timmy was one of the first big names at a skilled position that stayed home. Now there were others, but Timmy in the last few decades was one of the biggest names. And what he was able to do at the University of Hawaii across the college football landscape was amazing. Now, granted, he had some extra time. He had some extra games in there too that helped. But what he was able to do, no one can doubt that he was a talented quarterback with some major, major skills. And the fact that he went from St. Louis to the University of Hawaii helped that pipeline even more. And other players followed him. And the fact that June Jones was at Hawaii with this air attack offense and run and shoot schemes, I mean, it was you didn't have to sell the program. You didn't have to have the best facilities. If you were a wide receiver in Georgia and wanted to catch a football 10 times a game, Hawaii was where you went. That was just how it was. You got Devon Bess and Ryan Grice Mullins, and I'm the fear of not being able to name a couple guys is going to upset me. So I'm not going to do that.
Your Jason Rivers, your CJ Hawthorns, the names can go on and on.
All those guys, they wanted to come and play for June Jones, and they wanted to catch balls from Timmy Chang. Period. That's how it was.
You know, you do mention like receivers, and if we're going to name some guys, I think one thing that kind of just put me on the floor a little bit earlier when I was getting ready for research is the fact that Timmy Chang is going to be coaching at Hawaii, and one of the kids he's going to be coaching is Chad Owens Jr. And that, to me, just put me down on the floor for a moment of the next generation of Hawaii players from these Hawaii stars. That absolutely blew my mind when I saw that earlier today.
Well, and he's a walk-on. So part of that walk-on pipeline that has been there and set in place for a number of. I was a walk-on. Rich Miano was a walk-on. There, I can name a ton of guys that were walk-ons that had gone on to play. And I say my name in that category, but I'm nowhere near as talented as guys like Rich Miano and Chad Owens and those guys that that. Colt Brennan was a walk-on. I mean, are you kidding me? You know what I'm saying? So Chad Owens Jr. is a walk-on with a talented father. That doesn't always translate to being a talented son, but we have that opportunity to see. And I didn't mention Chad Owens in that line of receivers, but he was one of the big ones that was a main target for Timmy too back in the day. And he went on, he had a chance to play in the NFL and went on to have a storied career in the CFL. And so, you're talking about guys that had some success. And I'll say this, and I mentioned it earlier. Part of the reason why Hawaii had success and part of the reason why some of these guys made it to the next level was because of the offense that they ran. Period. There really is no argument to that. And I think when you look at it, you'll have more. You'll have more players. They're going to rack up, numbers that are going to be astronomical. It all depends on the quarterback that you bring in. It all depends on your coaching staff. And those are all the variables right now that people are waiting for. So I think people are, it's like being asked to take a job, but until you see the contract, you're not excited. You kind of reserve your excitement until you actually pin your name to the line. And I think a lot of people are like that, right? They're ready to sign, they're just not as excited as they could be until they find out what this coaching staff's going to look like, and then they hear some of the players that are coming in. I know there's some transfers from other teams that make it look good, but when people are still have this bitter taste in their mouth from losing one of the best linebackers in the country in Darius Muasau, and then another lineman, Jonah Laulu. But the Chevin Cordero, losing him really did put a bad taste in everybody's mouth. But I think over time, the sweetness of what we're going to see and the hope that we have, it will make it all better.
So I want to ask you one more related football question, and I know Bobak is going to want to ask another question as well, but
Okay.
I think for right now, as one big sum up, when we see the new era of Timmy Chang, what is the hope with Timmy Chang?
That he's a good football coach, and that he can be a good head coach. He's relatively young in the business and in life. he's 40 years old. But the hope is that he, does everything I already said. I mean, obviously the bottom line, and when you list it out, the bottom line is win week in and week out, right? That's your first goal.
Absolutely.
Your second goal would be to win the conference, right? That sometimes gets lost in the shuffle, but win week to week, win the conference, go to a bowl game and win that. Those are the goals, right? Not make it to the Sugar Bowl again, not go 12-0. Those types of things are so hard to come by. Ask Alabama. You know what I'm saying? So it's like those are the goals that you need to have. Win week in and week out. Win the conference, go to a bowl game and win that. And in between that, hope that you have made a difference in a young man's life. Get the graduation rates up, and hope that, because let's face it, 2% of these guys may go on and may have a chance, but that's 98% that will never play football again after their senior year. You have to be able to set them up for success in life, not just football. Can Timmy do that? I don't know. He's a young coach. I think he'll, if he hires a good mix of coaches, I think they'll have success in doing that. I think those are all goals. I think those are all reachable goals. And I think he's got a tough task ahead of him. And it's a ride that I'm willing to jump on, and I hope a lot of other people do too.
So I have to ask, because you're obviously the co-host of Sam Choi's Kitchen. So I have to. I don't think we've ever had someone more qualified to give us advice on your best places to go eat if we're on Oahu.
Okay, well, I have the luxury of being a co-host of two separate shows. My day job is the co-host of a lifestyle show called Living 808 on KHON2, the Fox affiliate here in Hawaii. And in that show, we have a lot of eating segments. It's why I have to work out every morning at 4:30. I get up at 3:30 every day. I go to the gym at 4:30. I work out until I go to work. Because I eat for a living, and so if not, I'd be 400 pounds, and I probably could play again, but it'd have to be at an offensive line position. But with that said, I get the opportunity to talk with chefs and work with chefs on a daily basis, and I love it. There's so many good places to eat here. I mean, you direct message me for fear of upsetting a client or a friend at one restaurant. I would not want to pinpoint any one restaurant, but I could DM you a bunch. As far as working with Sam, what a fabulous human being, a great guy, and an amazing, amazing celebrity chef. It has been a dream to be able to work on these two shows, but when I was asked to work with Sam, the relationship him and I have built over the last 6 seasons, we're about to start this week, we're about to start our 7th season, has been amazing. And to be able to dial his phone and him pick up and say, "Hey, Uncle Sam, what would you do with this?" And then he gives you a full recipe within 5 minutes, and I'm cooking in 10. I mean, you can't get it. It doesn't get much better than that.
Well, how about this? Here's one that wouldn't put anyone on the spot or exclude anyone. What is your go-to comfort food when you're at home and you want to make yourself something, or it doesn't even have to be something you've made yourself?
Well,
what are yours?
I think Sam will say that and let me just go ahead and say this too. My wife is an amazing cook, and her parents have some great recipes. But my dad's an amazing cook too, and so some of those recipes have been brought down. Number one, homemade Veneri pasta sauce and meatballs. It's a Southern Italy recipe, and it's super good. And I can't eat red sauce or meatballs when I go out to eat because of it. Um, I think, and Sam has said this about me, I think I'm a pretty good maker of steak, both pan fried and on the grill. I'll kill it with a ribeye. And that's my favorite steak. I love me some sushi, and we do sushi nights here where we make our own sushi rolls and stuff. I love that. Um, Last night I made a really easy recipe with some hamburger meat, quickly fried up with some ginger, garlic, and onions in some sesame oil. Add some tofu and some watercress, and boom, you got yourself a meal. Easy stuff. Uh, there's just so many recipes and there's so many go-tos. But if I had to pinpoint one thing that I could probably eat on a daily basis is sushi. I could go for sushi on a daily.
Oh, and no kidding. And especially with all the fresh seafood that you get to have out in Hawaii, I would say that is the one thing that I have missed the most coming
Yeah.
into Texas. They'll tell you, oh, you've got all this great stuff on the Gulf Coast. No, it ain't the Pacific Ocean. It ain't
Well,
the Pacific Ocean.
and Sam Choi is known to be the godfather of poke. So if you can't eat
Yes,
fish, I'm probably not working with him.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, but Johnny, we have gone a full hour here, and I appreciate your time so much talking about the Bows, talking about Timmy Chang coming back home. Thank you so much for coming on and spending a little bit of time with us. I'm wishing you all the best on everything that you have coming up this season with the new administration. And again, this has been just an absolute delight to talk to you. More than anybody else, many years ago, you actually got me my first ever gig in media working back at KHON. And the fact that, we've now come full circle of I get to invite you on a show and get to talk to you about this kind of expertise. It's hard to not get a little bit emotional about that. And I wanted to, again, just express my gratitude of, taking that first chance on me way back when, and also just spending the time now. I have adored the fact that I get to still call you friend all of these years later,
Well, thank you
and
so much for that.
thoroughly appreciate you coming on board and talk to us a little bit about the Bows.
Well, you guys have all been great, and Jordan, you've grown into a fine young man, my friend, and it's been great to be around you all these years. I know we haven't seen each other for a while, but it really has been fun to talk about football. I can do it till like I said, I'm blue in the face. But let me just leave you with this for everybody that's listening, and just to know, I know we all have our passion. We all want to see a winning team, but when it comes down to it, I was 17 years old when I got to the University of Hawaii. These, while they are labeled as young men, these are kids. Show them some support. Don't be so hard on them. Some of them are going to make a lot of money one day. Some of them are going to have their own troubles in life. They're all human beings, I'd rather be positive about what we're about to embark on, as opposed to, there's so many negatives out there in the world, and if we can all just have, put on a smile, say hi to somebody, you don't know how it's going to change their lives. I'm in full support of this football team, of this staff, and it's been a real pleasure to talk about it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming out and listening. Bobak, did you have any final thoughts as well?
Yeah, well, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us. I wanted, of course, thank John. That was really an enlightening view on the state of Hawaii football as we head into the 2022 season in a number of months. I also really enjoyed that final comment about the fact that there's so many young people who go to play football. I think sometimes folks forget what it was like to be 17 or 18, and the world just seems so raw. I mean, I'm in my 40s as well, so I think back to that time and I was a different person. So whenever players make mistakes, even I tend to be a lot more forgiving than I used to be, even 5, 10, 20 years ago, because I'm like, no, I remember what it was like to be young and dumb, but also I remember what it was like to enter a much larger world, and for a lot of these folks, a lot of these players, it's such an exciting moment to get an opportunity while it's still kind of a still kind of fun and pure, but at the same time, you're transitioning to an enormous level of attention and grandeur and the traditions that make college football so wonderful, with all of these teams and all of their traditions and all of the just the fun that goes along with it. I think that was just a lovely way to close it. We went a full hour, a little more, which is wonderful actually. But we generally typically wrap up after about an hour, so I think this may be a good time to wrap up. JD, what do you think? I know, by the way, SRS got kicked off. Sirius always ends up getting kicked off mid-show because Twitter Spaces just doesn't like
It's a running
working.
bit. It's a running bit.
It's a running bit, and we tried to bring him back on, and we kept watching him get kicked off. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up tonight. I think we'll go ahead and that was so good. It's hard to top it. But thank all of you out there for joining us here for our CFB Talk. And he just rejoined us as a co-host. That's hilarious. hey, Sirius.
We'll see how many minutes this lasts. I mean, I was listening. I just couldn't talk or anything. So
you just joined us as we were closing it. So I mean, again, this was our CFB Talk 16. Thanks all of you for joining us this evening, and we hope all of you have a great evening.
Aloha.